This is just an informal recording just to help you understand a little bit about how we're using our whole class reading units within the lockdown, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and show you what I'm doing, but obviously think about all the time how it will link in with what you're doing. So our units have vocabulary on, and what I tend to do is take the previous vocabulary weeks, not all of them, because obviously we've been doing this since September, and I'm going to go through some of the words with the children prior to the lesson, even now, because I don't want them to forget what they did in September, and I want to keep bringing it back to the front of the mind, some of this vocabulary that we've already looked at within some other texts. So what I'll do is I'll go through the words. Usually we'll have a definition underneath, but I've taken them off because these children should know these words. So during the lockdown, whilst we're doing it, I tend to record my lessons. I'm going to just have to keep pausing every now and then to see if the children can have time to read these words and bring up the learning that we've looked at before. So I would say, for example, on this one, I'm just going to get a little pointer, which is, if somebody was asking what this is, it's the spotlight tool, which just shows it a little bit clearer. So I use this, and I'll be asking the children to read the words, and then afterwards I will show them the picture that they're used to seeing. We've looked at these last week anyway, but this is my actual lesson I'm going to do this week. So peace, I talk about having the CE and in surface. So we might talk a little bit about the words as well. We've already talked about the homophone, peace and peace, so I might just quickly look at that. Wonderful, we've looked at before, looking at using the suffix full and then surface. And I've just chosen I've chosen this one because we're looking at Amazing Africa and Kenya. So I'll talk to them about the globe so that it links in a little bit with the geography as well. They know these, so I'll just get them to read them, but I'll just pause. Notice we've got the definitions on now, but maybe next week I'll take those off. But I'll keep on hiding the pictures. This is revision for my class, just looking at saw. So I could point to different ones and ask them to make sure that they know the difference between them when they're writing them. And I talk about spelling and so on. And if you did this, you could do as many or as little as you want. I'm quite limited with my time. I've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to take an hour's lesson and split it up into, say, 3, maybe 4 parts now. So this would be one lesson. And with this lesson, which is how to hide a lion, I've turned it around a little bit because that's the way the lesson is, because I want them to predict before we read the text. Usually I'd read the text to them before, but now I'm going to get them to predict before we do it, just simply because that's the way I wanted to run this lesson. I will show them the skills. This also helps if you're doing home learning to show the parents what we're going to focus on. So we always focus on vocabulary. We're looking at prediction, which is what we're going to do within this first few lessons, and then inference on the second set of lessons there. So the learning goal, we're going to be looking at predicting what's happening in the picture. I will show them the picture, and then I will ask the children to read these with me because I want them to guess what's happening without knowing anything about the book at all. This is the book. If you can see, I don't still see my picture, but it's How to Hide a Lion by Helen Stephens. You can choose any picture at all, and they haven't got to have a lot to hand. But if you're recording this, they can just pause it, or if you're not recording it, they can screenshot it, or you may have to make a task sheet, which we've got as well. That we actually use Word, but we convert it to PDFs so that the children can download them on Seesaw, and or they can just do it directly on Seesaw. It's up to them. We just give them the choice. So the more choice you've got, the more accessible it is going to be to the parents. I would read through these prediction sentence stems. My children are familiar with this anyway, so I would just read through them to remind them what they say and maybe give them some ideas about what they could do on a few of them, because what I'm going to ask them to do within this first lesson, and this is as far as I'm going to go within this first lesson, is to give them the sheet with the picture on and then say to them, I can see. And that would link into this. So just tell me what you can see. And then you're going to say, right, now what is that making you think? What could it be about? Why is this lion in the tree? I suppose this could. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible that da da da. There's a little bit of word here that you could use, but you can cover that up if you want to. All these are editable, so you can just change them if you don't want anything, if you did use our units. I think, because, so I'd get them to think about what's going on, and I'd leave a couple of ideas about what's going on there, and that's as far as I would go within lesson 1. I would just show them these in lesson 2, which is the vocabulary for how to hide a lion. So this is the lesson 2, if you like, still in week 1. This is what I'd normally do within an hour. I'd talk about the word, the definition, give them some pictures. For especially, I would say, for example, this little girl, she loves fruit, but she especially loves oranges. What do you especially love? Out of those, which ones do you especially love? And if you don't like fruit, think of something else that you really especially love. It's more true than not, or more true for that than the others. With a word like unaware, I might say something like, okay, let's look at aware and unaware. You could even do a word sum. I've got the picture which shows no idea what's going on. So you could say, what are you aware of? What have you ever been unaware of? I would expect them to be chatting about this a lot with whoever's helping them with this home learning, because in the classroom we would have a discussion about these words and how we can use them in the context of the book, but out of the context as well. Surprise, they love this picture here. So what is an unexpected event that could make you look like that? Surprise. They love actually pulling these faces as well. So I'd actually ask my children to perhaps show me, even though I can't see them, I'd say just show somebody with you what your face looks like if you're surprised. And then we'd finish with idle, and I'd tell them that's lazy. These are probably words, especially, as I say, especially idle, unaware. They may not know them in the context. So I would tell them that this word is going to be in the book. It means lazy. And then I'd say, when have you ever been idle? When's anybody told somebody else that they're being idle or lazy? So a bit of chat about that. And then for this lesson, again, I would stop there and ask them to perhaps put those into a sentence, or put it into their own context, like make a sentence using especially, or draw a picture of something that you especially like and write the word especially. So I want them to use those words somehow within this context, so that then they can link it in with the context of the story. Now, I've put that on there just because we usually do tweet the author. And there's the book that we're using. So that would all be another lesson. And then the lesson that I'm going to do next, I introduce the vocabulary again in the same way, but then I would make sure I read the book. I want to read the book up to the point where that picture was with the lion in the tree. And then for this week, somehow before this lesson, under my visualizer, which I've got over here, I would be reading the rest of the story and just sharing it. I'll probably just do it at story time, because they need to have that story before they can then go any further. So we usually read the story first, and then I'll show them the summary of the text, which is where it comes in for this week 2. So with week 2, we're looking at inference, vocabulary, and the clarifying. So that's the summary of the text we've got for how to hide a lion. And what I would do was then read it through, and they would find these. So I would go back to these words here and ask them if they can find them. And I would just pause the video, or tell the parents to pause the video and ask them to find them. And again, that text is going to have to be accessible, or they can point to the screen. It doesn't matter. It depends how much you want as evidence for what they're doing. Sometimes my parents will just say, yes, they've done this, and that's absolutely fine. If they print it and circle it or highlight it like they would in the classroom, that's absolutely fine. If they take a photograph and highlight it, that's absolutely fine. I don't mind. I just want them to be reading. But with this text, what I would do with this text, I'll just go back a bit, I would read it through with them, and then I would read it as echo reading and choral reading, which means my turn, your turn. You know, it's all within our whole class reading course how we do this, but I would do that as well within this part. I wouldn't go any further than that at this stage, simply because that would be enough. That's the sort of chunking that I'm doing. But the next lesson, I would revisit the text and then go in and talk about the questions. So these are the questions. We're looking at inference. I do want them to infer here, so I will have to teach them how to do that. I will do this way by modelling it. Okay, so I've got a few questions there I'd model. And then if they wanted to, they could do the scaffolded silver or bronze. Now those ones there are supported a little bit with the sentence stems, and these are supported even more. But again, I just give them the PDFs and I let them choose. If the parents want me to guide them, I will guide them and I'll say, yeah, everybody can start here. I know which children need the scaffolding and which ones they don't, but I'm just going to leave it up to them. I know, so that the parents can choose. Or we want them to read, we want them to enjoy texts, and we can just do the best we can in this situation. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing that because I just want to talk to you briefly about how you could do this with a year 5, so or year 6. I'm just going to show you this one, which is Pig Heart Boy. We've got this within one of our units here, but if you've got a text like this, we haven't got all the text printed out for the children to use. So what we tend to do is just use the first part. We either take pictures of it to use. If you put it on a platform that's locked down to your class to be accessible, it should be okay for them just to use, and then take it off again, or get permission from the authors or the publisher before you do that. But it just follows the same principles there. Okay, the only other thing I want to show you that we use a lot are these reading warm-ups, so that if you do want to promote reading with your children using the different skills, we use these quite a lot within the warm-ups as well. So I'll be using, maybe this is obviously year 5, so I wouldn't use this with mine, but you use the text, and then we'd be looking at, I'll just move that, we'd be looking at visualize first of all. So there'd be a visualization question, but this is quite easy to do online because the text is the same, and you can literally press the PowerPoint and get another question. This one's prediction, this one's retrieve, and so forth. But this is for spring term A, but we've got them for spring term B. We've even got the autumn ones if you want them for each year group. You can see how many slides there are there. So that will help to keep the skills sharp if you're thinking of something else to help. We've got those from year 1 right up to year 6 as well. Okay, so I hope that helped. If you need any more information, you know where we are. Just contact us at editor@theteachhub.co.uk. But I'll put links into where some of these resources are within where I promote it anyway. Okay, on the Facebook site, I'll show you where they all are. So thank you very much.